Hi guys, I'm Aaron, and this is the rather dirty engine bay of my 2005 Mini Cooper S, otherwise known as the R53. This engine was used in the 2002 to 2006 model years on the hardtop for the S model, and on the S model of the, I think it's like 2004 to 2008 convertibles. Basically, if you've got this big supercharger intake, or supercharger intercooler here on the top of your engine, this is the engine that you've probably got in there. And I want to talk to you about the supercharger belt. It's actually an accessory drive belt, but it drives a supercharger, the water pump, the AC compressor, the alternator, and it all happens down here on the left side of the engine. Hold up my flashlight so you can see a little bit here. There's a pulley right there on top, and you can just see that there's the rubber of the belt right there, and this is a fairly new belt that I installed, unfortunately for me, on the side of the road about a month or two ago. So this is a nice new belt. One of the ways you can tell this is a nice new belt is, let's look up, this is the engine damper right there. Let's look behind that engine damper, and you can see a spring. Coming out the back side of that spring, let's see if I can position my light so you can see it too. There, at the top side of that spring, there is a little flat bar that sticks out, and on my car, it's kind of looks like a little twisted nub sticking off. It looks like that bar was kind of torn off. There we go. Now, on the end of that bar, there's actually, through that bar, you can just barely see it on mine. There we go, that's a little better angle. You can see a little bit of a hole. That's an oval hole in that bar. If you see half of that hole or less, just like mine is, your belt is in good shape. When you start to see all of that hole, that means your belt's wearing out or it's starting to stretch. And if you see all of that hole plus a little more metal because it's sticking out a little further, it's definitely time to replace that belt. Now, replacing the belt, I've done write-ups before, and it's really a fairly easy task of peeling this back. You take off the screws on the front side of this, flex it back, lift the car up on a jack stand, so you can take this front right wheel off, and that'll let you be able to access the belt from kind of up underneath this big painted red metal rail. You should be able to, and your biggest problem though, and the reason I wanted to make this video, was to talk about what to do to relieve the tension on that belt. This guy right here is the top of the belt tensioner pulley. It's a little shroud or a cover goes around that pulley, and it keeps that belt taut. And to be able to get the old belt off, if it hasn't broken, and the new belt on, you've got to release the tension on that. And to do that, Mini makes a tool, which I happen to own. It costs $50, $75 or something like that, several online stores. And it's basically a big long pry bar with a little cup on the end of it and a couple pins. And this is going to be a challenge with a set of hands, or just my own hands, nothing extra. Let's see here. But this tool sticks down on here. The cup goes onto that bolt right there that's underneath the yellow dipstick. And those pins go into the side of that housing, that cover for the, so everything kind of winds up looking like this. Let's see if I can get it attached. Yeah, so the tool sticks down in there and catches, and you pull backwards on the tool and it will lift that, release the tension on that tensioner. When that happens, it's great to have a second set of hands, and both the hole that you can just barely see in that little flat bar will come out the end. The bar will lift up through that spring as the spring compresses, and you can put an Allen wrench through that second hole that'll appear, and that'll lock the tensioner, the belt tensioner, into a place where you can then easily remove and mount your new belt. The problem is, as I discovered when I bought this car a couple months ago, I blew the belt on the way home, and I didn't yet have this nice $70 tool in the back of the car. So what do? First thing you do is you find yourself a 16 millimeter or a, what's this other one? It's a 16 mil, and you can also use, if you only have English, what is this? A 5/8 inch socket. Get yourself a wrench, and this bolt right here, that fulcrum bolt, loosen that belt or that bolt by 2 or 3 turns, okay? That'll cause it to stick out a little further and take up more of this gap. Okay. Then you take your socket, that 16 millimeter or 5/8 inch socket, and you put it on the end of that bolt. Now you want to, I said 2 or 3 turns to loosen that bolt by 2 or 3 turns. You want to loosen it as far as you can and still be able to get that socket on there. So if you did 3 or 4 turns and that socket doesn't fit on the end, then tighten that bolt up a turn, try it again until you can just barely get that socket on there. Okay, so that's step number 1. Step number 2, if you don't have that nice funky tool, is to go find yourself the biggest pry bar that you can. Okay, and this is a wrecking bar that I've got laying around. I found when I was driving across country and I didn't have all my tools with me, I found a pry bar set at AutoZone that had like a 1.5 feet, maybe a foot and a half long pry bar with a nice pretty handle on the end of it that worked. But basically the biggest, strongest, piece, something you can find that has a little flat end on it. And we're going to put that pry bar, now this again, it's hard to do, let's see, with the light, we're going to put that pry bar down so that it fits just on the back side of that socket, and it catches that pulley, let's see here again, this guy right down under here. All right, and we're going to catch that pulley with the socket, or with the, so we're using that socket we just installed as the fulcrum. Going to rest the pry bar up against that. We're going to put the end of the pry bar on the pulley that's just behind it, and then we're going to pull back on the pry bar this way, which will take the tension off of that pulley. Then you'll have that second set of hands come along. Take an Allen wrench. Where is it? There it is. There's that spring. There's that little bar. You slide the Allen wrench into the second hole that will pop up, and then that tensioner will be locked back in place and you'll be able to do your belt replacement. Good luck, guys.